Hello students, I am Dr. Shamustri Maji, an assistant professor in the Department of English at Durgapur Women's College. I welcome you to the second part of my lecture on T.S. Eliot's poem The Love Song of J. Alfred, Prufrock, and today we will discuss the epigraph to the poem. My dear students, you must be wondering what is an epigraph. I'll tell you. An epigraph is a quotation or motto placed at the beginning of a book, chapter or poem as an indication of its theme. I repeat, an epigraph is a quotation or motto placed at the beginning of a book, chapter or poem as an indication of its theme. So, keeping in mind this particular definition of epigraph, we will try to analyze, we will try to understand the epigraph to Eliot's poem that we are discussing now. So, when I am talking about the epigraph to Eliot's poem, I am referring to the quotation that follows the title but precedes the lines, "Let us go then you and I when the evening is spread against the sky." So, you can see that this particular quotation, we are not able to understand the meaning of it because it is written in a language unfamiliar to us, right? The English translation of this is as follows, quote, "If I thought that my reply would be to someone who would ever return to earth, this flame would remain without further movement. But as no one has ever returned alive from this gulf, if what I hear is true, I can answer you with no fear of infamy," unquote. My dear students, these words are spoken by a character called Count Guido da Montefeltro, who features in the Italian poet Dante's Inferno in Canto 27 in the lines 61 to 66. So once again I say, the quotation that we are referring to as the epigraph to Eliot's poem is taken from the Italian poet Dante's work Inferno. Particularly, it is quoted from Canto 27, lines 61 to 66. And I would like to read once again the English translation to it. Quote, "If I thought that my reply would be to someone who would ever return to earth, this flame would remain without further movement. But as no one has ever returned alive from this gulf, if what I hear is true, I can answer you with no fear of infamy," unquote. So my dear students, in Inferno, what happens that in particularly 27th canto, the canto number 27 in Inferno, here Dante recounts his visit to the underworld. Underworld is a place similar to the hell, and in the 8th chasm of hell he meets Guido, who has been punished and he has been imprisoned with other false and deceitful people in a single prison of flame. And what was Guido's offense? He had been treacherous. He has been imprisoned for his treacherous advice on earth to Pope Boniface. So what happens that when the damned speak from this flame, the voice sounds from the tip which trembles. So can you imagine, can you visualize, my dear students, that how the prison house would look like? It's a flame, right? It's a flame referring to fire. So it's a flame, a huge flame in which these people, that means who had been treacherous, who had been false, who had been deceitful, they have been imprisoned. They have been imprisoned there, and you can just imagine that how difficult it is for them, how miserable it is for them to stay, to to be imprisoned in such a burning atmosphere, right? So Count Guido, he has been imprisoned in a flame in the hell, and he is talking to the poet Dante. Why? Because he has mistaken Dante as one of the dead people who are in the hell. But Dante was not one of them. He has been there only to visit the place. So Guido refers to this and goes on to explain that he speaks freely only because he believes Dante is like himself, one of the dead who will never return to earth to report what he says. Right? Could you understand? Could you follow? That Dante is someone who has visited the hell alive, but Guido mistakes him as one of the dead ones who is left to suffer in the hell like him, and that's why he reveals his mind. He expresses his thoughts to Dante because he thinks that the dead will never be able to go back to the earth, to the world of the living, and that's why whatever he is telling to Dante will remain confined within the walls of the hell. Now, my dear students, you must be wondering that why did Eliot use such a reference while writing about Prufrock, or what is the relevance of using a quotation from a literary text of the Middle Ages while describing the condition of a modern man that is represented by Prufrock. My dear students, this epigraph is an example of allusion. Allusion, intertextuality, all these are important features of modernist literature. So when I'm talking about allusion, I'm referring to the poet's deliberate reference to a particular quotation from sources outside the text. Just mark the word deliberate. Eliot is using this reference deliberately to connect the condition of Guido and Dante with that of Prufrock. Then again, you may ask me that in Guido's story, there were two people. One is Guido and the another one was Dante. So there were two voices communicating. And then over here it's the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. That means one person. But my dear students, have you noticed that how the poem begins? Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. So you and I, just see the use of the pronouns, you and I. We don't know whether Prufrock is talking to a friend or there is someone accompanying him. But as we read the poem, we can understand that he is lonely. He suffers from alienation. And then it comes to our mind that then the you and I referred to in the very first line of the poem may refer to the split selves of the narrator, that is Prufrock himself. Prufrock's alienation is so intense that he talks to himself. Just like Guido knows that whatever he tells to Dante will remain confined within the walls of the underworld, similarly, when a person talks to himself, just as Prufrock is talking to himself, Prufrock knows that his thoughts, his musings will remain confined to his own personality, to his own self. It won't be communicated to anybody else. So this is how, my dear students, the epigraph, which is an example of allusion, highlights the theme of isolation, the theme of alienation, the idea of lack of communication in the life of a modern man. So these things are highlighted through this allusion represented in the epigraph. In my previous lecture, dear students, I referred to an essay by Eliot. I referred to the essay called Tradition and Individual Talent. Just mark the name, Tradition and Individual Talent. I know that you are wondering that what's the significance of tradition and then what's the significance of individual talent, and why am I referring to this particular essay in the present discussion. What I am trying to explain, my dear students, that why does Eliot refer to a text written in the Middle Ages while describing the condition of a man in the 20th century? So in order to analyze this, in order to find out the answer, we need to refer to the essay Tradition and Individual Talent. And now I will read little bit from this essay. Please listen to it. I quote, "Tradition is a matter of much wider significance. It cannot be inherited, and if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor. It involves, in the first place, the historical sense, which we may call nearly indispensable to anyone who would continue to be a poet beyond his 25th year. And the historical sense involves a perception not only of the pastness of the past, but of its presence. The historical sense compels a man to write not merely with his own generation in his bones, but with a feeling that the whole of the literature of Europe, from Homer and within it, the whole of the literature of his own country, has a simultaneous existence and composes a simultaneous order. This historical sense, which is a sense of the timeless, as well as of the temporal, and of the timeless, and of the temporal together, is what makes a writer traditional." Unquote. So, my dear students, this is an extract from Eliot's essay Tradition and Individual Talent. So now we can understand that why Eliot has used an allusion from a text written in the Middle Ages. There are different allusions. There are many allusions in the poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. We will discuss the other allusions in another lecture. But now, when we are discussing the epigraph, and we have already known that this epigraph this epigraph is taken from a text called Inferno, which is written by Dante, a poet, an Italian poet of the Middle Ages. So this particular reference, this particular allusion helps us to understand Eliot's poetic thoughts, or rather it enables us to understand Eliot's thoughts on poetry. That what did he mean by historical sense? That he wanted to connect the past with the present in his poetry. And allusions referring to intertextual references. These helped him to develop the historical sense about which he has talked in his essay. These allusions help him to connect the past with the present. So this was what I wanted to discuss about the epigraph to the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Thank you, my dear students, and we will discuss again in my next lecture. Bye.